What's up, everybody? And we are back with Steve Bland to get another match reaction, which, of course, is being brought to you with thanks to our friends at OneFootball. You can download the OneFootball app entirely free with the link in the description. It is the best football app out there, bar one. Steve, bar none. Sorry, I said bar one. I meant bar none. Steve, it's one of those frustrating evenings, mate, isn't it? I mean, we can't really point to a whole lot we did wrong there today, although there are some people losing their minds in social media. I thought we seen today why Chelsea won the Champions League and how they are a difficult team to break down and don't concede many, particularly in the second half.
They're a good team, aren't they? And it's not as easy as people think, to play against 10 men, especially when, he was pretty astute, wasn't he? Sticking with the five. A lot of managers, I imagine, would, keep a couple more 4 players on, go to a 4 perhaps. He, stuck to his 5. He's got, Azpilicueta there. He's got Thiago Silva there. Seriously experienced players who know exactly what they're doing to shut a game down. I'm not disappointed. I mean, I thought that after we played one of the first 15, got after them a little bit. Loads of energy, a couple of half chances. Henderson had a good chance, didn't he? Not absolute clear-cut chances. But then, I thought up until, we got the penalty, I thought they were coming on really strong and could have been 2 or 3 up at that point. There were a couple of chances they could have got Lukaku in and Mason Mount drag one wide, didn't he? But then, so yeah, I mean, look, is it a bit frustrating? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we, crying out, I think, for a player that could unpick the lock a little bit. But I'm okay with it, and I think
that's what the chat were saying. We're at the point of, are we back to the same frustrations? A low block team, albeit this is a very well drilled, well executed low block team. Who were only a low block team because circumstances dictated, I suppose. I mean, look, you've got to give Chelsea credit. I want to get your thoughts on the penalty and the red card.
My initial feeling was that it was a touch on the harsh side, and that if it had been the other way, down the other end, I'd have been livid. But then the more you look at it, the more you see a second movement with the arm. It's almost instinctive, isn't it? He goes with his leg and his arm and trying to get his arm out of the way. But then it seems like the arm kind of comes around a little bit. So, look, it's a stonewall penalty. If the arm, I mean, it seems pretty clear, doesn't it? If the arm is involved in the ball not going in the net, it's got to at least be a pen. Has to be. And then the law says he's got to go if it's deemed to be a deliberate movement into the way of the ball, which I think it seemed to be. So, but sometimes it makes it harder, doesn't it? A team like Chelsea, it seemed to make it harder. We seem to have more chances, better opportunities when it was 11 against 11, and it just made it very difficult. But yeah, like I say, I'm kind of okay with it. My only frustration is I had Reece James in my fantasy league team, so he didn't score too well for me today.
What were your thoughts on young Harvey Elliott today? Obviously, big call from the gaffer to give him a start today against the reigning European champions at a fully packed Anfield in the first real big game of the season. And I don't think he let the manager down one bit, personally.
He's fab, isn't he? He's just so confident. It's that kind of confidence bordering on arrogance that we love and we see in all the top players. They've got this like swagger about them, and he wasn't overawed by it at all, was he? Just wasn't overawed. He took it in his stride. I thought he was fantastic, mate. Get the ball away a couple of times, but he tries things. He's brave on the ball, isn't he? That's the main thing. He's really brave. He's really courageous. I thought he was really good, and he fully justified the pick. My only thing was, and I think Neville made the point in comms, or somebody made the point in comms, is it took Henderson away from that right side of midfield kind of position that he's very good in. I thought the skipper tonight was a bit off, particularly the first half. His passing wasn't great. He was I thought his delivery into the box was really poor on a couple of occasions. So that was the only thing, wasn't it? That position Elliott had is kind of Henderson's position in that midfield system. In the first half, I didn't really think the midfield, Chelsea are hard to play against in that area, aren't they? I remember Tottenham played against Chelsea. It was either last year or the year before last, I think, and they played Dele Alli in a number 10 to just be all over Jorginho all the time. We don't play that kind of position, do we? We don't have a guy in the number 10 position. It seems to me that's a pretty obvious place to put someone when you've got Jorginho. Just likes playing the game at his pace, doesn't he? He likes to dictate it. He's easy on the ball, but I think if you get about him, I think he can be ruffled, and we didn't really do that enough. So, look, like I said, all in all, I think we'd all probably have taken a point before the game, given how good I think Chelsea are going to be. Lukaku didn't really do an awful lot, did he? His first touch is absolutely shocking, and it hasn't improved one bit.
I thought the two lads dealt with him very easily, to be honest with you. I agree with you on Hendo. I said the very same thing during our watch along as well. It just didn't seem right, him being on that left side. I mean, if you see Keita there, he's got that understanding with Sadio Mane, and with Robbo maybe not being up to his brilliant best, we weren't getting the overlapping runs as much, or they weren't as in sync, and it did look like we were trying to force everything through the right hand side at times and just over rely on Mo at times.
Yeah, it did, I think, and I mean, it was a good avenue, wasn't it, in the first half, particularly. They seemed to be able to, get an overload on Alonso and Rudiger, and it seemed to be working quite well. The only frustration, I guess, second half is just as somebody said on social media, the first 20 were an example of how to play against 10, and the second 25 were an example of how not to play against 10. Seems like the game kind of slowed a little bit, which is perfect for them. They want to take time over the throw-ins and free kicks and goal kicks and stuff, and we didn't get the game going at our pace really enough, I think, and maybe that'll be a frustration. But yeah, like I say, I don't think these big games against these top teams are so tight, and winning them is great, but not losing them is just as important, more important probably.
What are your takes on? I don't want to dwell on the penalty. So, what were your takes on the refereeing performance? Because again, there was some frustrated Liverpool fans aiming some stuff towards Sadio because he wasn't staying on his feet. And I've been somebody who I like games being allowed to flow. I like the referees not falling for the cheap stuff on both sides. I'm all for that, I have to say. How did you see today's refereeing? Look, let's take apart the penalty.
He was all right.
Everyone's had their say. I didn't think he was too bad either. I'm being honest, and I'm not one of his biggest fans.
Mate, I mean, Anthony Taylor's onto a loser every time he sets foot on the pitch at Anfield, isn't he? There's already an agenda against him, with a lot of people that, he's got to have a 10 out of 10 to even get a 6 out of 10 in some people's eyes. I think he's not, I don't think he's the best ref in the world, but he's far from the worst. And I think it was, I'm with you. I like seeing the game go a little bit more. And I think players are gradually getting used to it, aren't they? They're gradually learning that they're not going to get a free kick for chucking themselves over it the slightest of touch. And I think it's been decent. I think it was interesting. Didn't really, we haven't really talked much since last week. I didn't really go along with what Klopp said after the game last week about the rough, the Burnley players making it being a bit kind of rough with a few of the lads. So I think in general, it's a good thing. And I think it's, like I say, going to take the players a little bit of time to get used to, because it is different. They're not going to win so many tactical fouls. They're not going to be able to chuck themselves over in the corner and win a free kick. It's going to be a bit different, but I think it's definitely a change for the better, isn't it? It's making the game, get a lot better rhythm.
I want to ask the dreaded question now, Steve, while I have you on, because I haven't been able to speak to you all week. How are your feelings as we edge towards 11 p.m. on Tuesday?
Oh, I knew this was coming, mate. I knew this was coming. Look, I think, you know me, I'm quite measured about these things, right? And I do think that we arguably could do with one or two, more in. We saw that today. We'd have liked, once Firmino had gone off injured, he didn't really have a forward option, did he, on the bench? Minamino could have come on, I guess, but he'd have liked to have a different option down the middle, maybe, or on the flanks. And I guess that's where we're short. The counter to that is that if we had bought this midfielder that everyone's been crying out for, then Harvey Elliott doesn't get a game today, does he? And I think we'd all love to see, we all love to see that. So it's, the same people. I'm seeing the same people on Twitter saying, "Oh, it's brilliant that our club gives Harvey Elliott a chance, and he gets 90 minutes against the European champions, and he's fantastic, and he proves everyone, proves to everyone he has a talent." And in the same breath, or the next breath, they're saying, "Oh, but FSG out because they're not putting the money in." I think that Klopp is, I imagine he quite fancies another body, but I think as well he likes the challenge of developing a player and choosing a rough diamond, Curtis Jones or Harvey Elliott, and bringing him into the first team and watching him go, because he's got massive faith in these boys, hasn't he? And so I would have liked us to bring another one in. I don't see it happening now. But if it doesn't, look, he's got a good squad of players, hasn't he? He's got the squad of players essentially that won the Premier League, won the Champions League. Minus one. I still
feel like we're a little bit short attack-wise, if I'm being really honest. Like, let's take today as an example.
I do agree.
Bobby goes off. Let's say Bobby's out for hopefully nothing, but let's play the game where that injury keeps them out. We're immediately on the back foot, and we're immediately looking short now with regards to rotation, with the League Cup coming up and all this other stuff. We are always seem to be just one injury, Steve, away from a crisis in a position. And to me, it seems entirely avoidable. And I am pragmatic. I do understand that we don't want to block the pathway through, and we've just signed that youngster from Newcastle, and we've got Musialowski, and we've got all these great talented youngsters, but it just feels like there's still an availability in this window to do something. But I don't know what that something is. It's easy for me to say this.
Yeah, the problem. Yeah, I do agree to a degree. I've said this on our pod a few times that one of my issues is that it's really difficult to improve this team. This team is really good. It's really good. So do you want to buy, more squad players? Do you want, more people of the same level as Oxlade-Chamberlain and Curtis Jones and Minamino? Do you want that level of, just to get more bodies in? Or are we looking for players that can improve the first 11? Because that's really difficult, really difficult. And you've got to pay, ridiculous money to do that. Chelsea have gone out and bought, £100 million striker because that's the area they needed to strengthen. It's easier for United because, we can all pick, before they bought all these players this year, this window, we could have all picked 5 or 6 areas they could easily improve in. Our first 11, there aren't. It's different. It's different. So,
but shouldn't last year be a warning to how? To how things can go awry, caveat, and how. Yeah, and it is such a difficult argument to make, because I can see people in the chat as well saying, "How do you improve this first 11?" It's very fair. I don't disagree with everyone's points on this, but what's let me down, Steve, and what it's left me feeling a little bit frustrated is, in a window where I don't think many of us were expecting it to be as batshit crazy as it has been, I just feel like we're the only ones that have felt the pinch. Now, whether that's because we didn't forward plan enough, because we didn't believe others would be as active in this window, I don't know. But it seems to me we've ticked almost every box we had hoped to do, bar that incoming. So we've gotten rid of some of the players that were on the fringes. Divok's still here, of course, but there's still time in the window for maybe Nat Phillips or Origi or a couple of other moves to be made. And we have mostly got the contract renewal sorted out, albeit we need to get Salah's. Hendo's is done, just needs to be announced. And it just feels to me, mate, like, we were realistic going into it. None of us were really expecting an Mbappe, but we were probably hoping for a couple of 30, 40 million quid signings that we know Klopp could turn into and coach into better players.
Yeah, I guess I was probably expecting that as well, and I think there probably is. It's the drop off, isn't it? We've talked about this before. It's the drop off. With our team, our first 11 is a 10 out of 10, or 9.5 out of 10, and the drop off goes to 6. Whereas a team like United, to compare, because they have been strengthening, their first 11 is an 8. And the drop off is a 7.5 or something. So they're not as good, with the first 11. But then the drop off isn't as dramatic when they do, lose players through injury. So Yeah, it's a funny one though, isn't it? Because it was shown up last year. Last year was a freak year, whereas the season before that, when the first 11, when the main men were firing, you can drop an Oxlade-Chamberlain and you can drop even an Origi or a Shaqiri in at the time, and they don't look out of place because the rest of the team is firing so well. Whereas last year, it wasn't going well. The team wasn't firing, and we needed these bench options to be an actual option to come on and change the game, and that's where the problem is. So, there's a gamble. There's a massive gamble in finding, in surviving a season without any big injuries again, because we saw, how devastating. I mean, by the way, how good does Virgil van Dijk look since he's come back? He looks like he's never even been away, doesn't he? He's just absolutely imperious, and that we've seen already in the first 2 or 3 games. We've seen the whole team plays another 15 yards further up the pitch, doesn't it? It makes the opposition forwards think about him bringing the ball out. It changes the whole dynamic of the game. So if we don't bring anybody in, I'll be a little surprised, smidge disappointed, but I'll soon get over it because we've got a really good team. And I think one thing that's really been a feature of our purchasing over the last few years is that we've only gone for players that we really want. We haven't panic bought, like some other teams might have done yesterday. We haven't been opportunistic particularly. Minamino maybe is the one, but in general we've had targets, and if we've got them, we've got them. If we haven't, we haven't, and that's the way it's worked.
It just feels like another frustrating end to a window to me, mate. And I know, look, I get more hyped on these things than some other people. You're certainly the more level-headed of the trio that involved in Anfield Agenda's live stuff. It's there's still time for business to be done. Let's not count that out either. But it would feel like either we've played an unbelievable game of brinksmanship with some club over a player at this point, or it is a matter of not panic buying, but looking around and going, okay, United have done this, and that's not the way Klopp works, is it? But I just don't. It feels like an opportunity a window where clubs are financially desperate, and I think we could have exploited it, and I don't think we've exploited it well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. The other point that we made this a week or two ago on the pod is the money that's going into these contract renewals is massive actually, because there's a lot of these lads we bought. I mean, you imagine the wage hike that Andy Robertson's getting right now. Must be enormous.
To counter that, Steve, did you not see that the player's value can now be amortized over the further length of this contract? So, like Van Dijk, let's say Alisson, his value can now be spread over 6 years on the books rather than the 2 that he had remaining. We are upping the wages, the amortiz. I don't really like somebody that understood this explained it in an article, and I read it, and I've been trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about since.
Yeah.
But apparently, it does help in bookkeeping terms. I don't believe I'm uttering these words, but might actually help us next summer.
Yeah. don't start
everything I've said all stream.
Mate,
I've just
completely... don't do this to yourself. Don't do it. I mean, look, am I right? Am I right in saying the year after we won the Champions League, we only bought in Sepp Vandenberg and then went on to win the Premier League?
I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I have a memory like a goldfish.
Yeah, I have too. The point being, that there's a hell of a team there, and we know it needs a refresh. We know a lot of players are coming 28, 29, 30, early 30s, but it's a heck of a good team. It's a manager that makes players better, always makes players better. 2 or 3 really, really, really good young players coming in. Guys like Tsimikas, Oxlade-Chamberlain stepping up in pre-season as well. I'm okay with things at the moment. I've got my positive pants on. I think we're in a good place. I mean, yeah, again, the caveat is, we're 2 or 3 injuries away from complete disaster again. But I think probably most teams are in that position as well.
Here's a comment from Jordan before we finish up. Said Salah is too wide a lot. Use Mane wider on the opposite side.
So where would he want Salah to play?
through the centre, I'm gathering, in which case we need to go out and buy another winger and we need to change completely the way we play, because our 9 isn't really a 9. He's somebody who drops deep and occupies defenders and midfielders or drifts into the space. So I don't really get it, but I had to pull it up.
I'm not down with it. I don't. I'm not a big fan of Salah down the middle. I think he quite likes it because he's pretty goal hungry, and I imagine he thinks he can score more from that position. But I don't think he's. I think I like him off the right. So yeah, don't agree with that one.
I think we should probably wind it up there because I'm heading off into the international break, and I'm not too bad, Steve. I don't know about you, mate. I'm not too bad going in. It would have been a lot worse going in off a loss. Obviously, it would have been a lot better going in off a victory. But I've seen enough today to know that we're able to compete. We're here to compete this season.
I think so. I look. I mean, Chelsea are like we said at the start. Chelsea are a really good team, aren't they? Really good team, and they've for playing that system, for coming away from home. Yeah, it's 2 points dropped, but the way they set up, hitting Lukaku on the break, he's half decent at holding it up. I'm okay with the point. I'm okay. They could have played better. They could have done a bit more. They could have stretched the game a little bit more. They could have been a bit clever, a bit cuter. But yeah, I'm okay with it, and I'm pretty positive in general. I think we're
not allowed to, Steve. You're not allowed to be positive. It's not allowed. We're not. It's not allowed.
Honestly,
in our fan base, mate. We're not allowed.
I was saying to someone today, like, I hope Konate doesn't read his Twitter too much, because you'd have been forgiven for thinking we hadn't signed anyone. We've signed, the one player we have signed is one of Europe's best defenders, and he's going to be an absolute superstar. And so,
I mean, dropping 2 points at home to the European champions, having 7 points out of 9. I mean, it's not the worst start we've had, mate. I won't lie to you. I probably would have taken a point before the game started today, if you asked me, in all honesty.
Oh, I mean, someone said here, why do we have to be okay with a point? We don't have to be okay with a point. Of course, we'd like to win. I'm with you. I wanted the win too, but I don't think we'll look back on that, and say particularly it was 2 points dropped. It's, you don't want to lose these games. So, we move on, and I think, yeah, like you say, 7 points, that's all right. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that as well. And do you know what? Let's leave it on a bit of positivity, Steve. Let's leave it. Let's leave the angry merchants to it. And usually I'm one of them, so I feel like I'm on Team Good Guy here today.
Oh, maybe it's your influence. I bring out your calmer side. I bring out
my zen side. Yeah, absolutely. Look, ladies and gentlemen, again, don't forget, download the all new, all brilliant OneFootball app from the link in the description. Thank you, as always, to Mr. Steve Bland for joining us. Thank you to you guys for watching, and I'll be back at my player ratings in a few minutes, so stay tuned.